Forget everything the glossy postcards and promotional brochures promise. The moment you leave a crowded Texas highway and enter one of these polished new neighborhoods, the picture starts to change almost immediately. At first glance, everything appears flawless. The streets shine under the sun, the curbs are perfectly painted, freshly laid sod stretches across every yard, and the mailboxes look so new they could have been installed only hours ago. For years, many people believed Texas was protected from the kind of housing collapse affecting other parts of the country. That assumption has proven to be wrong. What appears to be a thriving, fast-growing neighborhood is quietly turning into a massive display of homes that very few people are actually interested in purchasing. The housing boom that followed the pandemic didn't simply lose momentum here. It pushed construction far beyond what the market could realistically support. Number 10. Kyle. Kyle earns the number 10 spot because it may be one of the clearest examples of suburban disappointment to emerge from Texas during this housing cycle. Few places capture the gap between expectations and reality quite like this rapidly growing community. During the pandemic housing boom, Kyle was one of the market's biggest success stories. It was promoted as an affordable, up-and-coming alternative to Austin, a place where buyers could still purchase a brand new home while remaining close enough to benefit from the region's explosive growth. The message was simple. Why pay Austin prices when you could get more space for less just a short drive away? Developers embraced that vision without hesitation. New neighborhoods appeared one after another, as if buyer demand would never slow down. Investors rushed in to purchase rental properties, convinced the population surge would keep vacancies low. At the same time, many families stretched their finances to the absolute limit, believing the opportunity was too good to pass up. For a brief period, everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. Then the market shifted. Demand cooled, borrowing costs climbed, and the momentum that had fueled the boom suddenly disappeared. Communities like Kyle quickly discovered they weren't prepared for what came next. Drive through Kyle today, and it's difficult to ignore how much construction outpaced demand. Street after street is lined with attractive new homes, yet an uncomfortable number of them appear lifeless. The neighborhoods look complete, but many houses feel strangely unoccupied. After sunset, entire rows of dark windows stand out, suggesting that many homes remain empty. During the day, a different pattern becomes obvious. For sale signs are scattered throughout the subdivisions, reminding visitors that sellers are still searching for buyers. The houses may be finished, but the market itself feels anything but healthy. Available inventory has climbed dramatically, forcing sellers to compete more aggressively than ever before. Asking prices continue to fall as homeowners and builders make increasingly larger reductions in hopes of attracting interest. Those who purchased near the market's peak are now watching their home equity shrink at an alarming pace. Investors are adding even more pressure by putting rental properties back on the market, creating additional competition in an area already struggling with excess supply. For many owners, what was once viewed as a smart real estate investment has become an expensive financial burden tied to a monthly mortgage payment. Number 9. Princeton. Princeton has emerged as one of the strongest warning signs in North Texas because it demonstrates exactly what can happen when the old strategy of drive until you qualify no longer makes financial sense. For years, buyers accepted longer commutes in exchange for lower home prices. Today, that trade-off is becoming much harder to justify. At the height of the housing boom, Princeton was heavily promoted as the answer for families who had been priced out of Dallas and its more established suburbs. It was presented as one of the few places where buyers could still afford a brand new home without giving up on the dream of home ownership altogether. Developers quickly recognized the enormous demand and responded with an aggressive wave of construction. New neighborhoods appeared almost overnight, and the city expanded at an incredible pace. At the time, it looked like another suburban success story in the making. But the market has changed dramatically. Ultra-low mortgage rates disappeared, financing became much more expensive, and buyers started paying closer attention to what daily life in these distant suburbs actually looks like. As a result, Princeton now feels less like an exciting opportunity and more like a community where the hidden costs of affordability have become impossible to ignore. One lesson many buyers discover too late is that the cheapest house isn't always the least expensive place to live. Sometimes the savings disappear once all the long-term trade-offs begin to add up. The commute is one of the biggest reasons for that shift in perception. Highway 380 has developed a reputation for frustrating traffic, and not in a way that locals joke about with affection. Daily drives are often filled with gridlock, accidents, construction vehicles, and overloaded two-lane sections struggling to handle thousands of new residents. For many commuters, the frustration begins long before the workday even starts. That reality alone has weakened buyer demand. More people are deciding that a lower purchase price simply isn't worth sacrificing hours every week sitting in traffic. The larger problem, however, is the sheer amount of available housing. Princeton is facing an enormous inventory surplus that continues to weigh heavily on the market. Builders are competing fiercely against one another, offering generous incentives, reduced mortgage rates, and attractive closing cost assistance just to persuade buyers to choose their developments. Even with those aggressive promotions, many newly built homes continue to sit unsold for months, baking under the Texas sun. Number 8. Manor. If there is one Texas suburb that became completely consumed by the excitement surrounding rapid growth, it's Manor. The announcement that Tesla would build a major presence near Austin transformed this small community almost overnight. Suddenly, the area east of the city was being promoted as one of the next great real estate hotspots in Texas, and expectations soared. That optimism triggered a buying frenzy. Investors poured money into the market, developers accelerated construction, and speculators purchased land as though future profits were guaranteed. New homes appeared at an astonishing pace, fueled by the belief that Austin's expanding tech industry would naturally push thousands of workers toward nearby communities like Manor. But real estate markets don't reward optimism forever. Eventually, excitement has to be supported by genuine demand, and that's where Manor has begun to struggle. One of the biggest reasons the suburb now faces difficulties is that much of its expansion was based on projected growth, rather than buyers who were already there. At first, that difference may seem minor, but when the housing market begins to cool, it becomes one of the most important factors separating successful communities from vulnerable ones. If the expected wave of new residents never arrives, if rental income falls short of investors' projections, or if the daily commute proves much less convenient than advertisements suggested, the entire investment story begins to weaken. That is exactly the situation Manor is facing today. The number of homes available for sale has climbed sharply, and many properties now remain on the market for months before attracting serious interest. Entire streets of newly completed houses can feel strangely quiet, creating an almost ghost town atmosphere where the construction is finished, but the vibrant neighborhoods everyone imagined never fully developed. In many ways, the community was built ahead of the demand it expected to receive. Now, homeowners, builders, and investors are all waiting for buyers who simply aren't arriving fast enough. The area's physical development also adds to buyer hesitation. Even after years of expansion, parts of Manor still give the impression of being a work in progress rather than a fully established suburb. Traffic has increased as roads struggle to accommodate continued growth. Infrastructure improvements have lagged behind the pace of construction, and many of the shopping centers, restaurants, and neighborhood amenities that were expected to follow residential development have either been delayed or never materialized at all. Number 7. Conroe. Conroe was long promoted as a peaceful alternative to Houston, a place where people could leave behind the congestion of the big city and enjoy tall pine trees, open space, and a slower, more relaxed suburban lifestyle. For many buyers, it represented the chance to trade crowded highways and dense neighborhoods for something quieter and more comfortable. Ironically, the race to meet that growing demand ended up creating many of the same problems buyers were hoping to escape. Drive through portions of Conroe today, and the change is impossible to overlook. Areas once surrounded by forests have been replaced by long stretches of newly built subdivisions. What was once known as a quiet East Texas community now resembles, in many places, an enormous construction zone that kept expanding without stopping to ask whether enough buyers would actually be there to fill all those homes. Instead of escaping suburban overcrowding, Conroe gradually created its own version of it. By 2026, the imbalance has become increasingly difficult to ignore. The local housing market now gives off a clear impression of oversupply. There are simply too many homes available and not enough confident buyers willing to purchase them. Builders are holding large inventories of completed houses that remain unsold for months. Price reductions have become increasingly common, and sales offices that once celebrated waiting lists are now working much harder just to generate interest. Selling newly completed homes is no longer the easy process it was only a few years ago. While that presents a serious challenge for developers, the situation can be even more painful for homeowners who purchased near the height of the market. Many now watch nearly identical homes in the same neighborhood being offered for noticeably lower prices, putting pressure on both their property values and their home equity. When that happens across an entire community, it begins to change the mindset of residents. Instead of feeling fortunate about their purchase, many owners start worrying about whether they made the right financial decision. Beyond the excess inventory, Conroe faces another issue that continues to concern both buyers and investors: increasing worries about flooding and drainage. As more land has been covered with roads, parking lots, and residential development, there are fewer natural areas left to absorb heavy rainfall. Every major storm raises fresh questions about how well the surrounding infrastructure can manage large amounts of water. Number 6. Celina. Continue heading north from Dallas, and eventually the suburban landscape begins to feel almost unreal. That's exactly where Celina enters the picture. Over the past several years, this community has been promoted as North Texas's next major success story, a future luxury destination and one of the last opportunities to buy before another wave of explosive growth sends prices even higher. But in 2026, a much more difficult question hangs over the entire market. Were all of these neighborhoods built to satisfy genuine buyer demand? Or were they constructed based largely on expectations that never fully became reality? Drive through Celina today, and you'll pass mile after mile of brand new subdivisions, freshly developed streets, empty lots waiting for future construction, and neighborhoods surrounded by wide stretches of undeveloped land. It's hard not to notice just how much the optimism exceeded what the market was actually prepared to absorb. Ironically, some of the most expensive homes featured anywhere on this list are also among the ones struggling the most to find buyers. The issue isn't that Celina lacks attractive properties. Quite the opposite. There are plenty of beautiful modern homes with upscale finishes and spacious floor plans. The challenge is that many of these homes carry luxury-level price tags in a community that, in many areas, still feels like it's under construction. Buyers were promised an upscale suburban lifestyle with premium amenities, but many instead find themselves dealing with long driving distances, expensive toll roads, demanding commutes, and the constant impression that the surrounding community is still being built around them. Those compromises become much harder to accept when mortgage rates rise. As monthly payments increase, buyers begin evaluating every advantage and disadvantage much more carefully than they did during the boom years. At the same time, growing inventory only adds more pressure to the market. Sellers are reducing asking prices more frequently, builders continue introducing increasingly generous incentives, and homeowners who purchased near the peak now find themselves competing directly with brand new houses that come bundled with financing offers they simply cannot match. Optimism alone doesn't cover the ongoing cost of ownership. Property taxes in this area can already be substantial, and when those expenses are combined with high purchase prices and elevated mortgage payments, the overall cost of owning a home becomes significantly more difficult to justify. Number 5. Little Elm. Little Elm earned its reputation by selling a lifestyle rather than simply selling houses, which is exactly why today's housing struggles have hit this community so hard. The promise wasn't just about owning a home, it was about enjoying a different way of life. On paper, the offer sounded almost impossible to resist. Buyers imagined living near the lake, waking up to water views, watching colorful sunsets, spending weekends boating or fishing, and enjoying a quieter suburban atmosphere that felt worlds away from the fast pace of Dallas. But once everyday life sets in, that dream often meets a much harsher reality. In Little Elm, reality frequently means sitting through severe traffic congestion, waiting in long lines of cars on a limited number of access roads, and living in a housing market burdened by years of rapid development in an area that was never designed to handle this level of growth. The lake may have been the feature that attracted buyers, but traffic has become the experience many residents remember most. That growing disconnect between the lifestyle people expected and the one they actually live has become one of the biggest challenges facing the community. Little Elm's geography only makes the problem more difficult. With relatively few major routes connecting the area, rush hour traffic can quickly become overwhelming. As the population has expanded, those transportation bottlenecks have become an increasingly frustrating part of daily life. Once homeowners realize they exchange the dream of peaceful lakeside living for hours spent staring at brake lights every week, the entire value proposition begins to lose much of its appeal. That shift matters more here than it might elsewhere, because Little Elm has always relied heavily on emotion to attract buyers. People weren't simply purchasing square footage, they were buying into an image of relaxation, recreation, and an improved quality of life. When that emotional connection changes from excitement to disappointment, the housing market inevitably feels the impact. Homes become harder to sell because the story that once attracted buyers no longer carries the same influence. The pressure intensifies as new subdivisions continue adding inventory to the market. Large builders are still competing aggressively, creating a difficult situation for homeowners who need to sell existing properties. Number 4. Georgetown. Georgetown is home to one of the most attractive and historic downtown districts anywhere in Texas, and that is exactly why its housing struggles feel so surprising. The town square is full of charm, the historic buildings are rich with character, and the entire downtown area continues to look like something you'd find on the front of a travel brochure. For many prospective buyers, Georgetown represents the ideal Texas small-town experience. It's easy to picture peaceful streets, locally owned restaurants, historic architecture, and a welcoming atmosphere that feels timeless. However, once you leave that postcard-perfect downtown and head toward the newer neighborhoods on the outskirts, the story changes remarkably quickly. During the housing boom, the suburban areas surrounding Georgetown expanded at an aggressive pace. New developments spread outward in every direction. But today, many of those same neighborhoods appear to have run directly into the realities of a much slower housing market. The city's beautiful historic center remains a major attraction, but it cannot offset the challenges facing many of the rapidly built subdivisions surrounding it. For years, Georgetown's extraordinary population growth became one of its strongest selling points. It regularly appeared on lists of America's fastest-growing cities, and that reputation attracted almost everyone looking for opportunity. Builders launched massive new communities, investors purchased homes expecting appreciation, retirees searched for quieter living, families moved north to escape Austin's rising costs, and speculators bet that Georgetown would become the region's next major success story. That strategy worked well while demand continued climbing. The problem is that rapid growth can quickly become a weakness once the steady flow of buyers begins to slow. Markets built around constant expansion suddenly become much more vulnerable when demand is no longer unlimited. That's exactly what Georgetown is experiencing today. The intense bidding wars that once defined the market have largely disappeared. Available inventory has continued growing, and many of the newer developments west and north of downtown now feel less like exciting expansion projects and more like neighborhoods waiting for buyer demand to recover. Number 3. Forney. Forney was once the kind of place homeowners loved telling their friends about, as if they had uncovered one of the best-kept secrets in the Dallas area. It earned a reputation as the smart alternative east of the city, a community where buyers could still purchase a spacious, newly built brick home without paying the premium prices found in the more established northern suburbs. The appeal was obvious. Buyers could enjoy larger homes, modern finishes, family-oriented neighborhoods, and the belief that getting in early would lead to strong financial gains as the area continued to grow. For a time, that strategy seemed to work perfectly. Demand climbed rapidly, developers accelerated construction, and homes sold quickly enough to convince many people they had made an excellent investment. Today, however, that same suburb is beginning to tell a very different story. What was once viewed as one of the smartest places to buy is increasingly being seen as one of the more vulnerable housing markets in the region. The speed of Forney's expansion has become one of its biggest challenges. Growth was so aggressive that the market is now dealing with an overwhelming amount of competition. New construction can be found almost everywhere, making life especially difficult for homeowners trying to sell recently purchased properties. They aren't just competing against other families, they're competing directly with large builders that can offer lower mortgage rates, attractive financing packages, extended warranties, and generous cash incentives that individual sellers simply cannot match. That leaves many existing homeowners in an extremely difficult position, with limited ability to compete on either price or financing. The area's natural conditions have also become part of the conversation. Much of Forney is built on expansive clay soil, a characteristic that can raise concerns about foundation movement. In a strong housing market, buyers may overlook that issue. In a slower market, however, even relatively minor concerns receive much greater attention. Questions about foundation performance, increasing traffic congestion, and pressure on public services have all become larger factors in buyers' decision-making. At the same time, some of the everyday lifestyle compromises are becoming impossible to ignore. Highway 80 is well known for heavy traffic, schools continue working to accommodate rapid population growth, and infrastructure improvements have struggled to keep pace with the expanding community. Many families are discovering that the affordable purchase price came with hidden costs they never fully considered when they bought their homes. Number 2. New Braunfels. For years, New Braunfels offered one of the most appealing lifestyle stories anywhere in Texas. The community was known for its scenic river, authentic German heritage, hill country atmosphere, and its convenient location between Austin and San Antonio. It seemed to offer the best of both worlds, a relaxed small-town environment with easy access to two of the state's fastest-growing metropolitan areas. That vision attracted thousands of buyers during the housing boom. Many believed they had discovered the perfect place to enjoy a slower pace of life while still benefiting from the economic opportunities created by the Austin-San Antonio corridor. Today, however, that carefully balanced image is beginning to show significant cracks. The biggest challenge facing New Braunfels isn't simply the possibility of flooding along the river. It's the rapid pace of development that has left the market struggling with too much supply. By 2026, parts of New Braunfels are beginning to feel less like a charming destination and more like another rapidly expanding suburban corridor filled with new homes competing for a shrinking pool of buyers. One of the area's biggest weaknesses is that infrastructure never fully kept up with the explosive pace of construction. Anyone who has driven Interstate 35 through this region recently has likely experienced the problem firsthand. Heavy congestion has transformed what should be simple daily trips into frustrating, time-consuming commutes. Roads that once handled local traffic reasonably well are now carrying far more vehicles than they were originally designed to support. That issue is particularly important because New Braunfels wasn't marketed primarily as an affordable housing market. It was marketed as a place offering an exceptional quality of life. When daily traffic, crowded roads, and constant congestion begin to undermine that lifestyle, buyers naturally start questioning whether premium home prices are still justified. The housing market reflects that growing hesitation. Builders have been holding completed homes on the market much longer than anticipated, forcing them to become increasingly aggressive with buyer incentives. Lower mortgage rates, larger financial concessions, and additional closing cost assistance have become common tools used to attract hesitant buyers and reduce excess inventory. Number 1. Cypress. Just a few years ago, Cypress stood out as one of the most desirable suburban communities in the Houston area. It represented everything many buyers were searching for: carefully planned neighborhoods, a polished suburban atmosphere, and enough distance from the city to offer a quieter lifestyle without making everyday travel feel impossible. Families were attracted by highly rated schools, spacious modern homes, neighborhood pools, parks, and wide residential streets. Developers looked at Cypress and saw years of profitable expansion ahead, while investors believed the steady flow of new residents into the Houston region would keep housing demand strong for a long time. That confidence has changed dramatically. By 2026, the community that once symbolized suburban success has become one that many buyers now approach with far more caution. Drive through Cypress today, and the first thing you'll notice isn't simply how much it has grown. It's how much it may have grown beyond what the market can comfortably absorb. New subdivisions continue stretching farther outward, but the optimism that once fueled that expansion has faded considerably. The neighborhoods themselves still appear attractive. Streets remain clean, landscaping is well maintained, and model homes continue to showcase the latest designs. Yet beneath that polished appearance, signs of a slowing market are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Sales offices have responded by offering larger and larger incentives because attracting buyers has become much more challenging than it was during the housing boom. Discounted mortgage rates, assistance with closing costs, flexible cash incentives, and generous upgrade packages are no longer occasional promotions. In many developments, they have become essential tools for moving inventory. Builders are no longer competing only against neighboring developers. They're also competing with homeowners who purchased properties at the height of the market and now need to sell in a much softer housing environment. That creates an extremely difficult situation for existing owners. A house purchased just a few years ago must now compete with a nearly identical brand new home down the street that includes financing incentives and promotional offers unavailable to individual sellers.